The last days of Khalid Hasan came and went rather quickly. I heard one day from him that he wasn't answering my calls for 2-3 days. When I finally got through to him, he said, "Oh, I've been sick." I said, "What is it?" I said, "You should go and see a doctor." He said, "Yes, I will." Eventually he did. He came back with not very positive news, was very concerned. And it's very funny that the last email he sent to me, in the subject line it said, "Food." And the email was about how basically now that he was unwell, home cooking was out. If he was going to get admitted to hospital, he wasn't sure what the hospital food was going to be like. And so whether the nice kebabs that Aslam, the cook at the embassy residence, had made were going to be available to him at all. And that day, my wife Farah, who was here at that time, ensured that a large supply of Shami kebabs was sent. And courteous to the last minute, he was unwell now. This is his last 10-12 days. He still sent back an email saying, "Thank you very much, you've sent a feast. I don't know how much of it I will be able to partake." I've learned a lot from Khalid Hasan. It's the first time I'm meeting his children. He kept a very private life. He would go to California and we would hear that he's going and visiting his son. He would go to Florida and he'd mention that he was going and seeing his daughter. He would send an email or a text message or leave a message on the voicemail saying, "I'm going to be in Vermont for the next few days," a state he loved very much. When I was in Boston, once he spoke about coming through Boston, saying that, I'm in Vermont, on the way back I could drive through Boston and is bahane Boston Sharif mein aapse mulaqat ho jayegi. And I said, unlucky for me, today I am in Washington Na Sharif rather than Boston Sharif. And so he kept a private man, and yet he was a very public man in terms of interaction. And as his son said, he had relationships. And I think one of the things I have learned from him is that in the end, it's the relationships that last. Each one of us is here because of what we feel for the man. There are too many people, amongst us, who think that the greatness of their causes justifies anything, ends justify the means, and therefore they do not care about people, whether it's in their ideas or in their interaction. Khalid Hasan negated that. I think Khalid Hasan will be remembered as much for his writing as for his humanity and his civility and his connection with people. His beliefs and his views were strong, but they were never so strong as to result in causing conflict with individuals. He could disagree with you in the morning and share a cup of tea with you in the evening. He could laugh at himself and he could make you laugh about others as well. Taking yourself too seriously is sometimes a problem. I think that we will all not only remember Khalid Hasan, but I think we will continue to learn from him. We will continue to learn from him of the value of a true Renaissance man in an age that is an age of specialization. What was Khalid Hasan's specialization, if I ask you? He wrote about politics. He wrote about cricket. He wrote about everyday life. He wrote about incidents from his youth in Sialkot. He wrote about Allama Chirag Hasan Hasrat and his jokes. He wrote about Akmal Alimi and Hussain Haqqani. He wrote about strategic issues. He wrote about the stupidity of many of his colleagues. I don't know how many people here remember his last column that appeared in the Daily Times. The one that described someone in Pakistan who takes herself too seriously and thinks of herself as some kind of a strategic visionary who will be responsible for winning Pakistan's nuclear war with the rest of the world. He called her Pakistan's Ann Coulter. And then rang me up and said, "You know what, Hussain Bhai, because of you I have taken one sentence out of the article." And I said, "What is that?" He said, "At one point I had written Ann Coulter is slightly better to look at. But I took it out because of all the discussions you and I have about not writing too much about people's looks. Because I said to him many times that when we are discussing public personalities, maybe we can be a little forgiving about their appearances, and beauty is always in the eye of the beholder anyway. So on that, I will come with a final Khalid Hasan anecdote. on one particular occasion, because we used to exchange this joke many times, him talking about certain people as beautiful and certain people as not being beautiful. There was one particular person, and he said, now please tell me, how would any beholder find this particular person beautiful? And so it was just his caustic humor, but you know, his knowledge, and he was a seeker of knowledge. I didn't realize what his age was, because I always thought he was like a couple of years older than me. Although I knew him since 1988, when I was when he used to start, when he started telling stories about, I joined the service in 1960, or I did this in 1958 or something. That's when I realized that our age difference was slightly bigger than I had originally thought. But the most important thing was that despite that, he had the ability, one of the most important abilities he had was that he did not insist on ever being the repository of all knowledge, which is an arrogance that comes. He would always ask, for example, when I came into an official position, he would always ring me up to ask a question, and he made a point of saying that. He said, I am not one of those who will ever claim that I already know something because I've heard it from someone else, because I need to check it back. And he was a seeker of knowledge. So we exchanged books until the end, and I think whoever will be settling the matter of his estate, in the sense he should look through his books. There might be some of mine lying there, and there are some of his books that might actually be lying in my study that need to be adjusted. The last thing I would say is that he expressed a great desire the day after I became ambassador. He said, do you realize that you're the first ambassador in a long time who can equally speak in both Urdu and English? So I would like you to make a few speeches, at least in Urdu, in which you don't use any word of English. And I tried very hard to oblige him, and I did, I think. And the other thing he said was that it's the first time that, in a long time, that Pakistan has an ambassador who basically is willing to engage with the community and who has an interest in poetry. And last but not least, he said, do you know, Hussain Bhai, what you and I share? And I said, well, many things. He said, no, one thing is very basic. I wish more people did it. You always return phone calls, and so do I. So I wish that I could now return, Khalid Hasan could now return my many phone calls that I attempted in the last few days of his life. As a parting comment on his passing, and I'm sure we will talk about him for a long time to come, Akmal Bhai. Many of us will probably sit and talk about him and exchange stories. There's many a story, and hopefully somebody younger than all of us will compile some of these stories, like the elder generation used to do about their elder generation. You had Shorish Kashmiri compiling anecdotes of Abdul Majid Salik. I wish that some of us would be able to do that about a legendary figure like Khalid Hasan. All I can say is he had great love for classical poets and classical poetry. The only contemporary poet that he had much time for was Faiz Ahmad Faiz, of course. A little bit of Ahmad Faraz maybe, and I of course followed a lot of contemporary poetry. And so, as a parting gesture, as a parting comment, I would just cite a contemporary poet, actually John Elia, who said, Hijr ke saath ya visal ke saath, khoob guzri tere khayal ke saath. Khuda Hafiz.